So, hi everybody, thanks for joining us today and welcome to the final part of our Peering 101 webinar series. My name is Mark Daly. I'm the Director of Digital Strategy and Business Development at Epsilon. So, as many of you know, interconnection and peering have grown exponentially, I guess, over the past few years, particularly this year. And it's clear that the digitalization, I guess, I'll try and get that word out, of our daily lives has contributed pretty significantly to that growth, particularly over this unusual year that we've faced. We're all living in I guess you call it a new normal. It's an overused term, but really we've all changed the way that we work, for many of us at least, and the use of the internet at home has changed, as well as businesses that have become faced with trying to understand how they enable better access to their mission critical business systems. There's lots of changes, and I think what's really happened is that we've all come to realize the importance of connectivity in our daily, day-to-day, both personal and business lives. And for this two-part roundtable session, we'll discuss what the peering landscape looks like now, how it's evolved and continues to evolve, and how it's going to look in the next few years. We'll discuss some of the latest developments in the internet exchange space and really try to highlight some of what we see as the main drivers for opportunity within this space as well, both from the IX perspective and the community perspective. So I'm really excited to introduce a whole bunch of really excellent and highly qualified people. Firstly, what I'd like to do in terms of the participation of the session right now is introduce each person individually, but I'll allow them to do that themselves. So first off, I'd like to introduce Peter. Peter, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Mark, and thank you for having all of us on this webinar. So my name is Peter van Bergel. I'm the CEO of Amsix. I've been there now for almost 3 years, and yeah, happy to be here and looking forward to the discussions.
All right, and next we have Thomas. Over to you, Thomas.
Yeah, also welcome from my side. My name is Thomas King. I'm the CTO of DKIX, and I'm looking forward to have spent a couple of minutes with you discussing the developments of the IXP and interconnection space. I think it will be a very, very fruitful discussion, I hope.
And then last but not least, over to you, Richard.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, and yeah, great to be here. I'm Richard Petrie. I'm CTO for the London Internet Exchange Links, and as with Thomas and Peter, great to have this opportunity to speak on the subject today.
All right, thanks, gentlemen. Thanks for joining me and this session today. So, as I kind of indicated, 2020 has been such an unusual year for all of us. I'm sitting here in my spare bedroom at home, which has become my workspace, normally an office worker. We're becoming used to using high levels of things like video conference tools, but basically all day. Pressure's being placed on carriers, mobile operators, CDNs, the content kings to address what we probably could call a pivot moment, certainly in content types for users individually and business-wise, and access points for internet users, different access points now, the home. Even businesses are having to figure out better methods of accessing and interworking their systems and applications. So all of this has been enabled because of internet exchanges and the modern interconnection capabilities that the partners of the internet exchanges have implemented in general as well. So over the past few months, we've seen the internet exchanges generally reporting peak bandwidth traffic. Probably means a lot of work had to be done to enable those peaks to be achieved. So in a nutshell, what are the changing dynamics that you're all seeing in the IX and the interconnection space today, and how different are IXs, say, compared from 2 to 3 years ago, and whether that's in an emergency situation or whether you've planned that change to meet these kind of these challenges, I guess. So I might ask Thomas from DKIX first. Thomas, what do you think?
Sure. So I see currently three challenges coming up, and which the IXPs are handling for the past couple of years. One is definitely that the IXPs are developing from pure peering platforms into interconnection platforms. So nowadays, mostly all large internet exchanges or also smaller ones are providing not only peering anymore, they are also providing cloud on-ramping connectivity. They are providing point-to-point data center interconnects and a wide range of different interconnection services on top of that. Yeah, we have seen this development, I think, in the past 5 years going stronger and stronger. If you just see at the if you just look at the customer list from DKIX, for example, we have got a few customers from the automotive branch, big ones, so like Daimler and Porsche, and that also shows that this industries, they develop into a digital industry as well, and they want to control and have a very good quality, high quality interconnection infrastructure in place, their backbone to deliver the digital services they want to run. And this shows us that this kind of companies, they jump on the infrastructure bandwagon as well. And the second development is definitely that IXPs are partnering with each other nowadays. There's a lot of reselling and connecting of different IXPs. DKIX, for instance, has a very long-running partnership with BKIX in Berlin. So we are connecting the BKIX in Berlin with DKIX Frankfurt, for instance, but also with the Moscow IX guys over in Moscow and Johannesburg. We have a strong partnership with them, and we have connected both IXPs or the IXPs over there with the DKIX IXPs. So we see that for a lot of customers, especially small to medium ones, it makes a lot of sense to use these partnerships and reciprocal reselling, so that they can have they can use remote peering even without having a POP somewhere in a different country, where from a traffic level it probably doesn't make sense for them to have a POP, but remote peering brings a lot of value for them. So this is why they are jumping on this kind of product, and this is why we see this kind of partnerships growing and growing. And the third development is definitely that we see a lot more automation and self-service demand from customers. So DKIX was very strong already for automating the internal processes and how we manage our network for a long time. But we started together with AMSIX and Lynx and NetNod, and also Epsilon was part of this endeavor, and Interaction. We started the IX API, and that just shows that there is demand from customers having an API available, so that they can interconnect with the different IXPs and the different networks nowadays, because the IX API is not only used by IXPs anymore, it's also used, for instance, Interaction is also providing the IX API for their own interconnection services they are providing. So we see a lot of demand in this area, and also a lot of development. So these are the three main challenges I currently see.
Okay, cool, thanks. Richard, anything to add to that?
Well, yeah, I totally agree with Thomas there on those developing areas. I mean, like in the peering interconnection scene, we are attracting enterprises onto the internet exchange. I think in the UK, we've seen a run of financial companies come and talk to us and join the internet exchange. So rather than Thomas mentioned there, the automotive area. Partnerships, likewise, we're going around the world and talking to IXs, and as we've got a very good working relationship with AMSIX and DKIX as well, and that continues to grow. I think what Thomas touched on there, automation is probably the thing that we're all focusing on, and we've been working on the IX API project. But I think there is still this variation between IXs. So if you look at the three that you've got on the call today, there is a slight difference with the rest of the industry, and with the IX API, we've chosen to make that open and to try and promote that across the industry, so that other internet exchanges around the world, small, big, medium, can all benefit from that. And I think one of the challenges that we'll see and we've seen because we're all trying to do a little bit more, especially at this time of the situation, is how some of the other internet exchanges keep up with that pace of change around that digitization, the demands of customers and members around the world. So very much focused on automation, very much focused on how we can do more for our customers. They come to us and they say, look, we trust in the IX model. We enjoy peering, we enjoy the peering services, but what more can we have you guys do for us? And that then leads into conversations around partnership and around different industries. But for us to be able to achieve that, we've all got to go through that digitization ourselves. We've all got to go through automating our processes and our tools and our systems. And I think that's the big challenge at the moment. That's probably as you said, over the last 2-3 years, certainly over the last 2 years for Links, that's where we've been putting a lot of our focus.
I think that you've just touched on a lot of points that I might ask a few questions about a bit later on. But Peter, anything to add to that?
Well, it's difficult, right, after those two answers. So I think most of the things have been said, and I wouldn't want to repeat them, so I can only echo them. I think maybe one other element that we've seen is increased competition, and not so much amongst ourselves, because to some extent we are geographically spread. But at the other end, there is co-opetition, and I think that's a new buzzword. But we also see, I think, two other types of competition. One, more and more, we're getting compared to things like transit, and understandably so because of price and etc. But I do think as an IX, we do provide a very different service. But there is an element of pressure there, price pressure, of course, being inserted. Another type of competition is other type of parties entering into the IXP play, or actually into the interconnectivity play. Data centers being one of them. So again, that's where the co-opetition comes in, right? So on the one hand, we really need the data centers and they need us, and we have this sort of symbiotic relationship. But at the other hand, we also see competition coming about from that same area. So I'm convinced that working together is critical here, and partnerships are critical. But it's not becoming easier. It's actually becoming more and more complex given COVID, of course, adding into the mix, but also the fact that there is a lot of consolidation happening. The market is maturing. Certain parts of the world are still emerging. You could argue others are quite mature. So I think, just to add to everything already said, that partnership element is crucial for all of us.
Yeah, so actually, you and Richard and Thomas touched on something I'll explore now, is around this trend for IXs to be more aligned and maybe even cooperate, if not partner. And do you see this kind of trend maybe leading towards a sort of global private peering and a sort of global private peering interconnect fabric that might sort of challenge the traditional IP transit approach of variable cost with fixed cost, and offer things like a kind of fixed capability, a visual control capability. Richard, do you kind of see that evolving out of these types of relationships?
I'm not necessarily sure you'll see a full, global IX of I don't know what you call the alliance or anything like that, but certainly, if you look at the dynamics which are happening within the industry, there is a lot more cooperation. So there are enterprises, businesses, service providers that are peering on multiple exchanges around the world that want a very similar experience. They want to be able to consume and peer digitally, easily, quickly, and also get insight. And that's really at the core of why the three of us companies, IXs, have been working on the IX API, because we are striving to try and provide a common interface. So even though we've got our own business models, we've got our own customers and members to please and service, and we've got our own, our own national, businesses, eyeball networks that want to work with us. We've got our model that fits for them, and we've got our service touch points that fits for them. But when they consume our services, whether they're in London or Frankfurt or Amsterdam or anywhere that we've got internet exchanges around the world, they get a very, very similar experience. And I think I don't necessarily see a global platform, but I see us striving and bringing along others to that common operating model and consumption of services. And I think that will be important, as things progress and we see, whether it's video conferencing, whether it's, we're going to have less travel, we're going to have more business at home, whether it's richer gaming services, whether it's richer content that's being watched around the world, we're going to have to see a much more common model and globally, and certainly IX's working together is definitely important for that going forward.
Cool. Peter, anything to add?
Yeah, I think you touched on two things, right? One, that global fabric, and the other one more about insights. And I think that's also a trend we're all watching or actually investing in, whether you want to call that analytics or insights or more knowledge about what's happening on the network. The way we look at it is that you could argue we're sort of getting into a third phase of IX services, right? The first being really about networks, the second being more about the content. And I think this third phase we're entering is very much about the digitalization of our society. And many organizations and companies understanding that many of their services will actually become digital. And then you automatically get into things like, privacy and what have you, but of course also cost. So therefore, I think there is going to be an element of, or not an element, it's going to be very important for most companies that work internationally to figure out their interconnectivity plan and strategy. And decide how to do that best. And I think part of that we see, all of us, by enterprises coming onto the IX directly, because they're starting to figure out that maybe cloud access for their ERP application, they can do better, more performant and control better through an IX than they would do over a standard transit hyper connection. So yeah, I agree. I think there is an element of global connectivity, whether we should do that as an IXP or work with the likes of yourselves to do that. Is important, and I think that element of control and visibility and being able to almost application-driven steer that traffic is something we see coming.
Yeah. Thomas?
Yeah, I would like to add on the global backbone. I don't think that we will see a global peering backbone or something like this. But what we see, we as DKIX, when we talk to our customers and we have some global players, they tell us that they would love to have DKIX, everywhere where they are, because they usually are quite happy with our service and trust in us, so that they would like to have the same stability and quality all over the place. Currently, that's not doable. However, we have expanded into 25 locations worldwide already. But yes, we see a demand for that, and that makes sense for us, and for our customer base to expand into this market. We probably might look into that, and over time, I can foresee that there will be DKIX more and more over all the hotspots where interconnection is needed. That could be, we could develop into that this kind of markets if customers really want that and are asking us to do that. Yes, I could foresee that, and then we come into an area which you described as a global peering backbone. I'm not seeing that we interconnect all these different locations, but I can see that we have different dots where DKIX or other IXP providers might be available and providing the same service, same quality, same processes globally, so that the customer, when he's signing up with this IXP, he already knows what he can expect and how things are working. And I think that is a value for customers, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Just in terms of some of the touch points around businesses that I've picked up on, are you seeing, let's call it a verticalization of your segment membership community, so new types of entities starting to move into the IX peering environment, and if so, kind of what types of companies? Maybe we'll expand on that a little bit, and sort of why do you think that's happening? And I'll start with Peter.
Yeah, it's like I said before, right? So we are starting to think about this like a third phase. Where you could argue that maybe when it comes to internet and connectivity, the networks and the content players were sort of the innovators, and now we see that majority of companies starting to understand they need to get organized around interconnectivity. So that's one. The other thing I would say is we really start to look at communities and communities of interest, whereby if you look at the internet as it operates today, it was never meant to do what it does today, right? So you could argue there are certain flaws in the design simply because they could never have imagined what the internet is today, this all-pervasive, everywhere available thing running our lives practically. On one hand, it's maybe the best invention ever, but we do have our challenges. So we believe there's going to be more focus on sort of communities of interest where people will start to find each other, and whether that's on the public domain or maybe in a more private setting, time will tell, and sort of get this parallel type of situation. But if you talk about those communities, then of course you can also talk about virtualization or verticalization, if that's a word in English, of channels. And that interest could be, I don't know, in healthcare, or Thomas touched on the manufacturing, the car manufacturing industry. They have many suppliers of different types. Maybe they get themselves organized in this sort of community with strong, good authentication, good security, privacy, protection of IP, things like that, which is very hard to get on the public internet these days. And the final thing I would say, we talk about public cloud and private cloud and hybrid and everything in between. I think it's also important to realize that there is no such thing as a public cloud, right? That is owned by somebody in a data center, on servers, etc. And I think that's another thing that companies, larger enterprises, really start to understand, where they actually start or accelerating their migration to cloud when it comes to applications, and the actual application and doing the transaction. But a lot of the data is actually being moved out of cloud again. And maybe we should come back on that later, because I don't want to talk for half an hour about this topic and leave no room for the others. So I'll leave it there. But I think those are some of the things we're seeing that do speak to your question about, do we see groupings, sort of vertical channels exist with our new customers? So the answer is yes, in short.
Thomas?
Yeah, let me add to that. So you were also asking what kind of new customers are signing up, and as Peter just mentioned, it's definitely the enterprise business space from different verticals actually. So automotive or finance or gaming or whatever, and mainly it's because they realize that they need to digitalize their products and come up with digital services around the core product to for the automotive sector, like autonomous driving, or all the new digital services you can nowadays consume within a car, and software upgrades and all this kind of stuff. To allow the car manufacturers, just to stick with this example, to provide a high quality premium service, which they also can charge for, they need to run their own infrastructure and have a full control of this infrastructure, even if they are not completely building it themselves, but renting or leasing part of it. They need to have a very strict control on that. And also, the internet is a perfect thing, and probably, as Peter mentioned, one of the most important things we have ever developed. However, we see that it also has some drawbacks if it comes to security. It's public, DDoS attacks, IP route hijacks, all this kind of stuff can happen. And if you move some of your workloads, and especially the mission critical workloads, to a more private setting, use the same underlying technologies like IP and Ethernet and all this kind of stuff, which we pretty good understand and have a lot of know-how all about it. So it's easy to run this kind of networks, but if you move them to a more private domain, and then we usually talk about closed user groups or cloud exchanges, then you can exactly build this kind of digital infrastructures we were just talking about for the automotive industry, for example. And this is what we're currently seeing, though. This digital services are added to the core businesses in a lot of industries, and we just touched the automotive sector, and this will go on in different areas, and we will see this large enterprise. And for me, it's mainly the large enterprise with a clear know-how and understanding of their infrastructure network interconnection needs. They will connect to IXPs directly instead of using just Transit or something else.
Really interesting. Interesting. I was talking a couple of years ago to a friend of mine who's a sort of senior ICT person, and actually we're having a pint, but it was basically we were trying to talk. I was trying to understand his network topology, and really without sort of exactly saying it. What he was telling me was that he'd moved from creating a network design or architecture or topology where he connected physical things up, a building or a data center, a server. And actually what he was really trying to do was redo his network topology based on applications. And he didn't really have the tools at the time to enable him to think at that level. So I think that's a real opportunity as well when you think of the community aspects to the IXPs. So, okay, so we're talking about business as well, but just overall, how does everybody see in terms of where's the next spurt of growth in traffic going to come within the IX world? Have we already seen it? Is it going to go back to more of a baseline? Are we going to see a lot more spiking? And if so, what do you think the circumstances might be that drive that? Maybe back to you, Thomas.
So I guess cloud gaming will be one of the next drivers because we see a lot of uptake in the cloud gaming business. So cloud gaming is that you don't have your, you don't have the device anymore in your premise that does the rendering for the graphics for the user interface. Actually, this machine is a server somewhere in a data center. And so only the graphic that you see on the screen is transferred from the data center into your home. And for that, you need to have a very strong internet connection, which is currently available nowadays, or also with 5G is, will be available soon, also to more remote places. And we have the technology to stream this kind of cloud games into the private homes, and I'm pretty sure that will drive the peaks at IXPs to a new high. Together with enrichment, as Richard already mentioned, enrichment of the video streams, we will see more 4K videos that will drive also a bit the traffic levels and also I guess software downloads. If there's a new version of iOS or Windows or whatever, or just the game which you can download, then we also sometimes see new traffic peaks. But in general, as digital services are more and more pervasive nowadays, and they are, we use more and more of them in all the different things we do every day. This will also drive the traffic peaks for the next couple of years. So I'm not afraid of traffic peaks. We have done that for a long time. We know how to do that. So capacity handling is our daily business. We're pretty good at that, I guess.
Okay, Richard, anything to add?
Yeah, I think we do manage traffic growth pretty well, but with an internet exchange, we're not just measuring our growth based on the number of packets, the number of ports, the bandwidth capacity. We going back to some of the dynamics you said about what type of companies, what type of industries, what Peter and Thomas spoke about. I mean, we're measuring our growth across, well, who are we attracting to the internet exchanges, why they join in, and we as I said before, we've seen some finance companies come to us partly because, as we said, they're understanding a bit more about how their applications are running. Some of it will be risk mitigation because they'll be looking at the we got all this on the public internet. What do? We liked private networks years ago. Now we like the internet, and we probably want something in between. And so I think people are finding their way to IXs. They're finding their way to understand the ecosystem of interconnection and the security and the stability that the well-run internet exchanges provide. But growth is going to come through many different areas, and it's probably going to be around new technologies like 5G network slicing and how that's adopted by industry. And I think so you do have people within enterprises looking at, from a strategic point of view, how do we actually build this together? How are we going to deliver applications to end users, to businesses, especially in the current circumstances? How are we going to do that tomorrow? And I think over the next 2, 3, 4 years, as 5G goes through the various phases of maturity and delivery, there'll be applications that take advantage of that, including the gaming that Thomas spoke about and 4K video. But there'll be different applications that come out, and I think it's great that the internet exchange is a part of that dynamic.
Yeah, Peter.
Like Thomas and Richard, I'm not afraid of the growth. The internet is here to stay, and the digitalization is only going to increase traffic. I think one thing to add, though, is that we are also seeing this dynamic between, dare I say, the core and the edge. whereby I think traffic patterns will change as well. For a long time, of course, the IXs have been sort of the what do you call it, the epicenter sometimes of where traffic comes together, right? And we've been dealing with these massive amount of traffic, and a lot of that has been based on the core data centers that we all connect into in our respective cities. But what we're also seeing with the proliferation of 5G, but also, everybody talking about the self-driving car or the smart city or all these types of developments. Stuff is going to happen at the edge, whatever the edge is, right? Where you define it, how you define it, but whatever. A lot of that stuff is just not capable of being done within that core data center. So, I mean, I'm not too optimistic about the self-driving car in a city like Amsterdam, London, or Frankfurt, for that matter. But if you think of that concept, then that car needs to actually interact with something within that city, whether it's a traffic light or another car or any type of IT device. And maybe it's not the best way to actually do a complete backhaul to a large data center somewhere in one of the major locations, but you want to do that at the edge. So I think a lot of the traffic growth is also going to be there, where traffic needs to be dealt with locally. And again, I go back to my remark about communities, right? That smart city may be that community, and you need to organize that locally. And it doesn't have to be Barcelona or Amsterdam or Frankfurt or London. It could be a small city somewhere that has the same needs. So I think an element of that growth is going to be about real-time, very fast decision-making type data that needs to be dealt with on a more local level than centrally. So on the one hand, I absolutely agree with the guys that there's going to be growth on our current platforms and in those core data centers. But I think to some extent there is also going to be a shift into more sort of edge type data that also needs to be dealt with. And we may be positioned in a very good place to do that, but time will tell. Time will tell.
Just let me give you an example to support your argument, because we also see that already. So in Germany, we run a very large internet exchange, probably one of the largest in the world, in Frankfurt, and we also run more regional ones in Munich and in Hamburg. And during Corona, we have seen a traffic increase of about 15-20% in Frankfurt alone, and we talk about 9.2 terabits per second already. So it's comparable to 3 million. HD, so high definition video streams concurrently viewed. And if you compare the 20% we have seen in Frankfurt to the 50 and 60% we have seen of traffic increase in Hamburg and in Munich, it already shows us that the edge internet exchanges, and Hamburg and Munich, we call them edge internet exchanges, they have seen a larger traffic increase if you look at the percentages than Frankfurt, and this is just another argument in supporting that the edge will be more important in the future.
Thomas, just to keep this conversation going, do you see, and for everybody, almost like the containerization of an IX function being in deployments in the edge, whether it's a shipping container that has some racks and some power, but actually having that interconnect function in there as a pre-package sounds like something that might be tested out at some point.
Oh yeah, definitely. So we call it DKIX in a box. So when we do a new deployment, like we did with Athens, with CKIX in Athens just recently, which is shipped just a box where everything is pre-cabled and all the different parts are already configured, and so you just plug in the power and the uplink we need for out-of-band connectivity to this platform. And then the IX is, starting up and loading the configuration out of our Frankfurt central hub, where we have all the configuration files and everything prepared. And then, it's good to go. So yes, definitely, we see this kind of, you called it containerization. We call it DKIX in a box, but it's more or less the same thing. We try to make it as easy to ship and to deploy this kind of IXPs, especially for these edge cases. And as since at the moment, at least, is also quite small deployment for us compared to what we run in Frankfurt, for instance. So yeah, definitely, it's that's something we will see. We will see more regional edge IXPs, and they might be deployed like in a box. So very simple, very easy. We don't need to have our engineers being on site, especially through Corona. That's that's helpful. We just get it installed with remote hands, racked and stacked, powered up, and everything is good, and service can start. And yeah, so I definitely see that.
Yeah, and Peter, I think AMSIX have been exploring that type of capability as well from a growth strategy as well, right?
Yeah, of course, the three of us are scarily similar in the type of services we offer. We call it as a service, what's in a name. But we've done a number of those, and we also choose to partner. In many cases, we believe, we don't know the local market that well. I wasn't born there, didn't go to school there, etc. So we partner, and we've done that in Bahrain, for example, with Bergel, which is going really well. We're going to launch soon in Uzbekistan, and there's a couple of others coming. So yeah, we definitely are on that track, and again, we are trying to bring our knowledge and our expertise in that sense. But like I said, the first going in would be to try and partner, given that partner can understand the local market better, and can also therefore better decide and help us how to drive the added value for that local community. So, but yeah, I mean, basically we're doing a similar thing. Yeah.
Okay, Richard, in terms of not just this, but kind of growth strategy generally and overall, excluding just putting more bandwidth in, how do you and Lynx kind of view what it is strategically that you'll be doing to add on to this story that we're running with right now? Any other kind of elements to that you see as part of your both technical and business growth strategy?
Well, I think Peter's touched on it, and Thomas mentioned. I mean, we all have a links in a box. Funny enough, sort of similar to DKIC. I mean, our strategy has been about, where do we need to put our exchange points, and so whether you call it a containerized or a mini or an IX in a box. We're going to different geographies, and Thomas mentioned, I think DKICs are at 25. Peter mentioned partnership. We've done a partnership ourselves with STC, and it's how do you deploy what we do today much more quicker, but obviously digitized, automated, and low maintenance. And we're all, part of our strategy, and we're all heading in that direction. There's other opportunities though, because what you learn from that is well, how to actually be deploying other use cases, and that really comes back, as I mentioned, 5G, and you've got neutral host networks where you're looking at then deploying a similar type model. Now, is that going to be an IX in a shipping container at a cell tower? I don't think it will probably go as far as that, but certainly when you talk about neutral host networks, there's an opportunity of having something much more localized than what we would see today. But for us, that's kind of version of the IX in a box. It's just repurposed for a different application where we're applying it to a different business model to suit the application that we're doing. So I think from a growth point of view, it's going to be around emerging technologies and also how we understand the user's consumption of those applications and really be part of that evolution. And then we'll grow through those, whether that's a partnership or we do it ourselves, but we'll grow through those engagements.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I mean, I can see segmentation applications like if we ever get back to say exhibition centers where large scale people coming in, leaving, but at that point there's a real need for localization of content and access. And yeah, okay, that sounds really interesting. Okay, so it's all really cool to hear about all these different technologies and maybe market segments and opportunities, but to kind of realize this, are you looking at establishing new types of partnerships or joint projects in the future to support this type of growth? And do you see other industry players getting involved to help and enable the IX community grow? I'll start with Peter. What do you think, Peter?
Yeah, so
joint projects?
No, so yeah, I just wanted to build a little bit on what Richard said, actually, in that, I think we're all looking at the same market, right? Maybe through slightly different lenses, but we're looking at the same type of development. I think what's maybe slightly different for us, at least listening to the other guys, is we sort of start to move more in data, it seems, rather than just the internet traffic, if you will. And an element of that again has to do with applications, but we start to see where the data lakes are becoming so large that pumping the data around is starting to become less of an option. So it's more starting to think about how do you actually consume that data. And one way could be in Thomas's example with sort of the online gaming, right? That you only transmit the screens rather than the full rendering. Other things could be around smart city again, that you keep data local. So we're starting to get pulled into discussions that basically are about either how do you do the routing and the security of that, or how do you actually interconnect large elements of data. And again, it also speaks to this core and edge type of discussion. So that's those are types of partnerships that we get pulled into, and it's all very premature, right? It's all sort of we're scratching the surface and trying to figure out what sort of role we can play. But that's where we see new developments. That's where we see new types of partnerships coming about that are slightly left field, if you will, compared to what we do today. But it's all, again, very relevant because a lot of it is based on internet technology and a lot of it is based on sort of hybrid public cloud type spaces. So I would say, yeah, that's where we see the future of growth and where we see new partnerships and technology come in. That that's going to be something where we need to tap into and play and develop solutions for.
Okay, Thomas, anything to add?
So I think Peter already touched it pretty completely. So no, I don't think there is anything to add here at the moment.
And Richard?
Sorry, Thomas.
Well done.
Richard?
Yeah, Mark. Yeah, sorry, Mark. I just the joys of being back in the office and then get a fire alarm. I mean, just really to add to, I mean, links. From a partnership point of view, we value the industry interconnection ecosystem partnership extremely highly. I mean, if you look at the early days when we went to regional exchanges up in Manchester and Scotland, we've always had a strategy of having a local steering committee that understands the local economics and the businesses and the community, and that's been part of our ethos as far as starting exchanges in the UK and around the world. And then when we went to other countries, we've gone into partnerships as well and joints, with STC, as I mentioned. And if you look at IX API, when we sat down and the three of us sat down and said, look, we really need to do something that is for the IX community. We picked partners, one with being yourself with Epsilon, and the other with Interaction. And we very much said, look, we're not going to be able to do all of this ourselves. We're not big companies. We've not got endless resources, and it doesn't make sense for us to try and develop technically areas. There's experts that are doing that elsewhere in the interconnection industry. So partnerships, whether it's the data centers, whether it's the network providers, or whether it's the local community, are critical for us, I think, for our strategy to be successful over the next two to 5 years.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that piece as well. Indeed, that it's good remarks here. We're all of a certain size, and you can't do it alone, right? It's true for every industry, but specifically for ours. And the developments are going so fast, and so much money being poured into it, and things like COVID, accelerating things that are unimaginable sometimes. Is therefore you need to partner, and sometimes it's hard, right? Because you may be competitors at certain stage, but at others you need each other to get things done. And that's true for the likes of yourselves as well, of course. With Epsilon, all three of us, right? We're all competing for your business, but also working with you to grow business together. So I think that partnership is really, really important and critical, and we should definitely keep on investing in that, because we can't do it alone.
And just to set a different focus on partnerships, because partnerships are critical, definitely, to what you all said is completely right. We have done a lot of our 25 locations together with partners because they have the local knowledge of the market. They know how to address the local community to build an interconnection ecosystem that works for all of us. We have the technical knowledge, we have the the global reach with our sales team to the global players. But the internet exchanges are about, you know, connecting the long tail, how we call it, the smaller networks locally with the big content guys, which are coming from, you know, which are connected globally. And so we need to bring that together. We need to bring the local knowledge with a local partner together with our technical excellence and the global footprint and the global business relations we already have, and then it can be very fruitful. And we have shown that, I think, in Dubai or in Singapore, Malaysia, or India as well. So in this case, it worked super great, I guess.
Okay, so that's all we have time for today. I'd like to thank Richard, Thomas, and Peter very much for participating and offering us very valuable insight. Please stay tuned for part 2 of the roundtable session with, again, Peter, Thomas, and Richard. And I'd like to thank you all for your attendance, and good luck, and talk to you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for the time, and see you around. Take care.
Thanks, Mark. Take care.